Well, howdy ho there, friends. I hope you're ready for another cat sermon where I'm going to tell you to love God and do all kinds of other stuff that I normally like to tell you because I'm cool like that. And I'm going to do things a little bit different this week. I decided no St. Francis prayer this week just because I worry that if I do the same thing over and over again, I'm going to get too formulaic. And when I talk to God, I really want to be as not formulaic as possible. But I just decided we'll try something a little different. Although I do really like that prayer, and you know what's probably going to happen is I'm probably going to say a prayer, and it's going to creep in anyway. But that's perfectly fine. But before we start our sermon, we're going to do our normal prayer. All right. Oh, sweet God, please guide us. Guide us so that we may be an instrument of your mercy. Guide us so that we can see you every day. Guide us so that we can see you in all things. Guide us so that we may open our hearts to you. Please dance upon the lotus of our hearts. Make it so that we can always keep you in mind. Make it so that we can always be kind. Make it so that we may always be forgiving. Make it so that we can always come back to you. O sweet Lord, please guide us. Guide us from the unreal to the real. Guide us from darkness unto light. Guide us from death to immortality. Guide us so that we may love one another and that we may love ourselves and that we may most importantly love you. Amen. Alrighty. Uh, and you know, just before I really start, would just like to say I really do like this church in particular because I kind of like the tallness of it, and like this whole area right here is kind of rounded, and that's kind of nice. And I like that a lot of churches here in Elden Ring, they have the nice mix of nature. I think it's important. We sometimes forget that God is, of course, within nature, but God is within all things. You know, and sometimes we kind of get into these habits of looking at other parts of life and our other kinds of life and just being like, you know, kind of dismissive of them. But we really shouldn't. You know, each of these little flowers here, you know, they're all part of God's creation. Every little leaf, every little thing. I mean, this might be a silly kind of example, but you know, I started my shower because I wanted to get my fur nice and clean. But I stepped into the shower and I realized that there was a little moth that was kind of like protected under one of the like parts of the, I guess, the shower curtain. And I was worried they would get wet, so I stopped my shower and I went down and I picked it up and I put it out on my counter to make sure that it was okay. But you know, we always like to think of ourselves as these really great individuals, but you know, little things like that do matter. You know, all life is on some level important, and you know, I don't necessarily think you're gonna go to hell because you hurt a bug or hurt a fly or something like that. But, you know, being gentle in all things and remembering that all things are part ultimately of God's creation and that, you know, God flows through all things is very important. I think we sometimes kind of try to put God into a separate box. We try to put God into a box where it's like, oh yeah, like this is the one time you get to God. Like some people are like, oh yeah, when you go into deepest samadhi or when you're deep in prayer, that's when God's there. And it's like, well, no, God's always there actually. You know, you're never far from God. And if you truly embrace that image and that understanding of God, you'll find that, you know, her mercy is everywhere, and you can always take a moment to remember God. And it's kind of interesting because even when you're talking to people who are annoying, you know, God is still within them. Even if the person is really annoying, you know, you still have the right idea, or the right idea should be to still remember that they are also part of God and that you are also part of God. You know, sometimes we're very kind and forgiving to others, but we get very judgmental when it comes to ourselves. And you know, you're allowed to make mistakes, and you're still part of God, and God still loves you and is still, you know, forgiving you. And if you sincerely reach out and ask God to forgive you, God will forgive you. And of course, we should also make a good effort to always apologize to people around us if we've hurt them, or apologize to those around us if we've done something wrong, even if we didn't necessarily mean to do it. Sometimes we just make little accidents. But I do always like that Bob Ross quote where it's like, there are no mistakes, just happy little accidents. And sometimes having an accident or having something not go the way you originally thought it was going to go can be very empowering. Or like accepting that ultimately everything is a part of God's will, and accepting that will can be incredibly freeing in a way, because you're like, now wait a minute, doesn't that mean that God's kind of controlling everything? It's like, yeah, well, kind of. I mean, everything is ultimately part of the big great divine Leela, the great divine play, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to just say that, oh, everything's just God's will, so I'm not going to do anything about it. It's like, no, no, no. What you should actually do is celebrate the fact that everything's God's will. Celebrate the fact that you get to be part of this play, that you get to have these roles within society. Maybe your role is as a brother or a sister, it's a mother, or it's just like, oh, just a person on the street. And even people we disagree with, they're still ultimately part of the Divine Mother's, great play. And it's very easy to become judgmental and forget that. And I'm not going to say I'm perfect about that either. Sometimes somebody will get on my nerves and I'll start thinking bad things about them, but then I always try to catch myself. And the Divine Mother is so wonderful. She catches me, or she puts thoughts in my mind to remind me that like, hey, that person you're upset with, that is ultimately still part of my play. They're still part of my Leela, and you should still be loving and forgiving towards them, even if they get on your nerves. And it's like, you know what? That can be really hard, but it is a wonderful, wonderful practice, and it can really relieve a lot of anguish within ourselves if we give ourselves over to the Divine Mother, if we give ourselves over and we embrace her warmly and embrace her will. We so frequently like to treat God as if God is so far away, but God really isn't far away. You know, One of the great things you frequently see among like Sufi masters or like Christian mystics, or Hindus, Hindu saints, is that you always see that they talk about how ultimately close God is. Meister Eckhart talks about emptying his heart of all of the things so that God could truly fill his heart. And we have so many people talking about how once they connect back with the divine, they never want to go back to the mundane world. They see the mundane world for the trick it really is. It's kind of like uh, it's always so funny to think about too, because if you cry out for the divine mother, she will come into your life. And sometimes it's hard to see at first, but you can tell that she's there. And but what we always want to do is, some of us, we embrace religion and then we're like, oh yeah, we're better than those other people. And but if you truly want to embrace God, you know what? That's not what you're going to do. That's your first thing, is going to be, I'm better than these other people because I'm following these moral rules. Yeah, that's such an easy thing to get into, and people do it not just with religion, but with all kinds of different groups. And what you should ultimately see is that all these people, all these animals, they're still part of my family too. Maybe you get annoyed at your family, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you should hate your family, or that you should treat your family poorly because they do things that you don't like or that you don't care for. You should always be remembering, the smiling great mother and all the wonderful things she does for us. And, sometimes it can make you real emotional too. I had this moment just a couple of days ago where I was listening to these stories about people who were companions of Sri Ramakrishna and Sarada Devi, and the things they were doing. And just like how Girish Ghosh, this playwright and kind of a drunkard occasionally, and things like that, how he ended up just falling absolutely in love with God, and especially in the form of Ramakrishna, and like how he would cry out for God and how he wanted to just be closer to God. And sometimes you hear that stuff and you think about it, and then you start to see the wonder of God around us. And it's it's very powerful. We tend to like to think of things in very mundane ways, and the thing that's funny about that is if you approach God and think about God and all the mundane things, it makes him spectacular again. I mean, just like all these little things we've been given and all these wonderful things. And there is a lot of suffering out there too. But the wonderful thing about that is that you can look at the suffering and you can know that people have transcended the suffering. People like Ramakrishna and various saints have transcended that suffering, or they've even used that suffering to get closer to God. Like crying tears for God is sweeter than going to heaven if you can do it. It's sweeter than anything else. Being truly craving the Lord in all of your moments is very much heaven on earth. And you know, we so often forget the great bounty of things around us. That's why I think we should all have a daily practice, a daily gratitude practice of just thinking about the things we're grateful for. If it's friends or family, or maybe it's just little things like, oh, hey, you know what? I got to have a nice snack today. And you might say, well, Kat, come on, talking about snacks, that's silly. It's like, it's really not. It's really not. So much of it sounds so kind of corny uh, if you're not used to it. But just saying, thanks God, I got to have like just a peanut butter and jelly sandwich or something silly, and you can be amazed at how much joy is can be present in any one moment. You can be amazed at how remembering the present moment and what a wonderful moment it truly is can be life changing. God has given us so much wisdom. And there are there are lots of people who don't follow the wisdom, or they just they're running around in the world and they're doing their own thing, and they're trying to get material pleasures, they're trying to get these other things. And you shouldn't hold that against them. Don't think less of them. Don't think that they're bad people, because that's not the real ticket. You should just pray that they have true joy in their life. Sometimes when you're driving, just when you're going from place to place, if people end up being in front of you, just occasionally just take it in your mind to say, hey, I hope the people around me get home safe, and I hope that they have a good day. And truly truly wish people to have a good day. It costs you nothing, and it can be incredibly uplifting. So many of us look at life as this great competition, but really we can cooperate. And maybe we can cooperate in big things, maybe big political parties trying to change the world and trying to get things better, but we can also cooperate in little things where just by being a presence of mercy, by being someone that's spreading positivity is, and I understand that there is that kind of fake positivity that some people put out there where they're just like trying too hard and they're just kind of doing uh, kind of weird things out there that I don't think are as um helpful as others. But like even them, don't look down on them. It's always important. We should always remember to look at each other with kindness and care, and to always be trying to uh let the people around us be joyful as much as we can. And some people are, you're just not. The truth is that some people you're not really going to be able to get to. Some people you have to rely on God to get to. And, maybe for some people they're just not going to have the greatest life. Maybe some people there is suffering. But what you should do is, even if you're suffering, you should do your dangdest, darndest, damnedest to not let your own suffering drag down other people. You should always be trying to lift up other people as much as you can. And you'll often find, you'll think, oh man, I'm in a bad spot. But you'll often find lifting up other people and trying to help out other people will put you in a better spot. So even if you want to be completely selfish about it, as silly as that would be, you can still attempt to bring things into a better light for people. And even if there's someone around you who is like kind of a quote unquote sinner or doing like a lot of bad stuff, that doesn't necessarily mean that you shouldn't extend to them a helping hand occasionally. Now, of course, you should also understand that in some cases you need to rely on God and you need to let God help people more than you can, because sometimes you're not going to be able to help everybody. And sometimes if you're not in the best spot, yes, uplifting others can be very helpful, but sometimes you do need to take a moment to just go back to yourself and just reconnect with God and just say, hey, if this is going to cause me too much stress, then maybe take a step back. And we still have to look out for ourselves as well, but that doesn't mean looking out for yourself is just not what a lot of people want to make it out to be. Ultimately, looking out for yourself is also still looking out for the people around you in a lot of ways, and you can make things easier and better for the people around us. You can be that pillar of grace in someone's life. You can be, the thing that plants the seed of forgiveness in someone else, or the seed of mercy and love in someone else. We can look up to the people around us, and we can also try to understand what it means to be a beacon and what it means to be, for instance, a follower of Jesus Christ, or a follower of Muhammad, or a follower of Krishna, or any of these different things. Like, being a follower of them doesn't just mean you follow the rules, although that's certainly part of it. It's also about understanding sacrifice. It's also about understanding that there are higher principles out there, that it's important to live an ethical life, not just because it's fancy or because the rules say you should, but because it can make your life feel better and it can make you better. And we also shouldn't you know condemn ourselves if we don't always live up to the standards that we have put out for ourselves and others. But that doesn't necessarily mean that there's anything that we should be too worried about, or that we should, you know, uh, not hold ourselves to standards. Because, my main thing is that following rules is great and all that, but it's not the main thing. It's not the following the rules that gets you better off. It's having the faith and putting the faith into the practices. Just like it's not like about bathing in the river Ganges is not really what relieves you of sin. What relieves you of sin is your faith and your asking God to forgive you. That's what really relieves you of sin, and that's what really gets you into a better spot. It's not just running after every desire, but or just like avoiding every desire. Like, you can be as desireless as you want. You can try to avoid desire every day and try to avoid sin every day, but if you're doing it just to make yourself look good, that's not great. Like, I find that a lot of Jesus' ministry, for instance, is about how the people around him, the people who thought they were so holy, the Pharisees, they were always doing these rituals and always doing this stuff, but they weren't doing it out of love for God or love for the people around them. They were doing it out of the desire to look good. They were praying in public to try and look good and like, look how much I'm praying and stuff like that. That's not what you should be doing. What you should be doing is trying to wholeheartedly truly connect to God and try to connect to people around you. Excuse me, I had a little kitty sneeze. But you should be trying to do this to connect to God and always trying to increase your love for God in your heart, and remember to be that beacon of light, and also remember to try and always run and help people when you can, and to be that positivity in the world. And remember that by doing that and by praying to God every day, we can get very close to God, in seeing God in our everyday life, and that God is always there, and that God should dance on the lotus of our hearts. And, now that I've said all that, I'm going to say a short prayer, and then we'll be ending the sermon. Oh God, please guide us rightly. Guide us to you. Let us follow the path and get straight to you. Let us embrace you at all opportunities. Let us be full of your love. Let us be full of love for mankind. Let us be full of love for all of humankind, for all of animal kind, for plants, for everything. Let us be full of love. Let us always run back to you, and let us see you in all things. Let Let the seeds of mercy and forgiveness grow in our hearts. Lord, make us an instrument of your peace. Lord, please forgive us for our sins as we forgive those who sin against us, and forgive us our debts as we forgive those who have debt against us. God, guide us. Guide us from the unreal to the real. Guide us from darkness unto light. Guide us from death to immortality. Om Krim Kali Kai Namaha. Thank you, Ma Kali, for blessing us. And please bless the whole world. Amen. Well, I hope you enjoyed my little sermon today, and I hope that you all have a wonderful day out there, and that you all have a day full of peace, and that you all can keep God in your minds. Thank you so much for stopping by. Bye bye. God bless.